Just hours before his death, Socrates gave one final lesson, and it wasn't about philosophy. The sun had barely risen over Athens. A thin veil of morning light slipped through the cracks of the prison wall, painting soft gold across the stone floor. Outside, the city was waking, merchants calling, sandals scraping. But inside that small, silent room, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Socrates sat calmly, as if he were greeting another ordinary day. No fear, no resentment, only a quiet smile, the kind that comes from someone who has already made peace with everything. Around him, his friends trembled. Plato later wrote that some could not speak at all. Others wept, their hands shaking as they prepared the cup of hemlock. The air was heavy, not just with sorrow, but disbelief. How could the wisest man in Athens face death like this, without a trace of fear? Yet Socrates' eyes were steady. He comforted them. He spoke softly, like a teacher guiding his students one last time. Not about politics, not about the gods, not even about philosophy, but about something deeper, something few ever understood. Before the poison reached his lips, he whispered a final message, a sentence so simple most people overlook its meaning entirely. What was he really trying to teach at the edge of death? True peace is not found in comfort, but in clarity. In Phaedo, Plato describes that final morning in vivid detail. Socrates welcomed his friends with the same warmth he always had, speaking gently, even making light jokes to ease their fear. His tone wasn't of a man awaiting death, but a teacher continuing a familiar lesson. Meanwhile, his students were falling apart. Phaedo wrote that their hearts were breaking. Some sobbed openly. Others hid their faces in their cloaks. They couldn't understand how he could sit there, unshaken, moments away from the end. But Socrates smiled. He told them not to weep because death was not to be feared. It was only a transition, a passage the philosopher had spent his whole life preparing for. To him, philosophy wasn't about winning arguments or collecting ideas. It was training for death, a slow, daily practice of separating the soul from the distractions and illusions of the body. He believed that the pursuit of truth required dying a little each day, to ego, to fear, to attachment, until nothing false remained. And that's why his calmness felt so different. It wasn't cold attachment, it was deep understanding. He wasn't escaping death, he had already made peace with it. But his final act showed something even deeper, not logic, but love. The more we understand life, the less we fear losing it. When Crito came to him before dawn, trembling with urgency, everything was ready, the guards bribed, the path cleared, the boat waiting beyond the walls. His friends begged him to run. They couldn't bear to see him die for something so senseless. But Socrates only smiled. He listened to Crito's pleading, then asked a single question that pierced through all the noise. Would it be just to save myself unjustly? It wasn't pride, it wasn't resignation, it was principle, the kind that doesn't bend even under the shadow of death. Most of us, if given the chance, would have fled. We'd call it survival or even wisdom. But to Socrates, escaping would have meant betraying the very truth he had spent his life defending, that integrity is more valuable than breath itself. He knew that freedom built on lies is just another kind of prison. To live without virtue, he said, is to die every day in small ways. So he stayed, calm, unshaken, not because he denied fear, but because he saw through it. Socrates understood something few ever grasp. Fear loses its power the moment you stop running from it. When you face it with reason, it dissolves into clarity. And clarity, not courage, was the source of his peace. He had already made peace with life, and so death could no longer touch him. When the cup was finally placed before him, Socrates lifted it with steady hands. No trembling, no hesitation, just quiet acceptance. And as the poison began its slow journey through his body, he spoke his final words. Simple, almost cryptic. Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Pay the debt and do not neglect it. For centuries, people have puzzled over this line. A rooster? A debt? At the edge of death, why speak of such a thing? Some dismissed it as a meaningless ritual, others as delirium. But it wasn't nonsense. It was revelation. Asclepius was the god of healing. In ancient Greece, a rooster was often offered to him as a token of gratitude, a way of saying, "Thank you for curing me." But what healing did Socrates mean? His body was dying. No medicine could save him. The cure was not physical, it was spiritual.
In that moment, Socrates was not thanking the gods for saving his life, but for freeing his soul, freed from illusion, from ego, from the endless attachments that make life heavy and fearful. To him, death was not punishment, it was liberation, the final release from the sickness of ignorance. He wasn't defeated, he was healed. And with the calmest of voices, as the poison reached his heart, Socrates gave thanks, not for surviving, but for awakening. He offered his last breath as gratitude for clarity, for truth, for peace. Most people remember Socrates for how he died, but few understand what he was trying to teach by dying that way. His last lesson was never about death, it was about seeing clearly. To the crowd, his execution was a tragedy. To his students, it was injustice. But to Socrates himself, it was completion, a closing of the circle. He had spent his life asking people to question everything, their beliefs, their fears, even their own identity. Now, through his death, he gave them the answer his words could never fully express. Freedom, he showed, is not found in escaping death, but in understanding it. Because once you understand death, you stop living in fear. You stop clinging. You stop pretending you have control over time. And in that surrender, you finally begin to live honestly. But most of us still run from endings, from loss, from change. We numb the pain instead of listening to it. We distract ourselves from the silence that could actually teach us something. We call endings failures when they are often the universe's invitation to begin again. Socrates saw what we still refuse to see. Every ending hides a quiet kind of wisdom. Every loss is a teacher in disguise. Every goodbye holds a truth about who we really are and what we're still afraid to face. Where others saw loss, Socrates saw healing. Where others saw death, he saw truth. And maybe that's what he wanted us to understand all along, that peace doesn't come from avoiding the inevitable, but from meeting it with open eyes and a steady heart. The art of dying is the art of living truthfully. Socrates' life wasn't defined by his final breath, but by everything he had already let go of before that moment. He had already died long before the hemlock touched his lips. He had died to fear, so the unknown could no longer control him. He had died to pride, so truth could speak louder than his ego. He had died to desire, so peace could finally take its place. That's why he smiled. That's why he won. To most, his death looked like defeat, but for him, it was simply a doorway, the natural step for a soul already free. He once said, "No one knows if death may not be the greatest of blessings for a man, yet men fear it as if they knew it is the greatest of evils." In that single thought lies the whole of his wisdom. What we fear is rarely death itself. It's the loss of control, the unraveling of the illusions we built to feel safe. But if you can let those illusions die before you do, you taste a kind of freedom that no power, no possession, no circumstance can take away. There's a stillness in that realization, a quiet awe that lingers long after the story ends. To live like Socrates is not to wait for the final moment. It is to die to what is false every single day. To shed the layers of fear and illusion until what remains is only truth and peace. The death of Socrates was never truly about dying. It was about awakening. His final lesson wasn't written in words or etched in stone, but spoken through silence, through the calm of a man who met eternity without trembling. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He simply drank the cup and smiled, as if he had already crossed the line between life and truth long before the poison reached his heart. Because for Socrates, philosophy wasn't theory. It was preparation, not for death, but for clarity. To strip away everything false, everything borrowed, until only the soul remained. He didn't fear death because he had already died to everything false. If this story moved you, remember this: the deepest wisdom isn't taught, it's lived. Subscribe for more timeless lessons from history's greatest minds, stories that awaken the soul, one truth at a time.